know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers, and welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose 1 year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. If you head over to patreon.com/punklautopod, for $1 you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. And Dylan, what did we do last week?
Last week we did a combination I'm Listening News of the World, where we run down the news stories, mostly looking at punknews.org and maybe some other spots, but we decided to combine two of our recurring features. So we also did an I'm Listening, where we looked at the music that we've listened to in the last month. Going forward, as we do these, it'll be like a 1 week, 2 week window, I think. Still kind of tweaking what we're doing on the Patreon, but seemed like we maybe ran our course a little bit on some of the bigger gimmicks, and also we just wanted to cut down on the amount of time it was taking us to do all of the recording that we're typically doing in a single day. So a little tighter and neater. That's the goal for, I think, the main show and the Patreon kind of going forward. But
yeah, we got some good feedback on the format adjustment that we did last week on the show, so we're still going to be tightening up a few things there as well to make it a little more flowing. But yeah,
a little more less repetitive.
Yeah, right.
A little more of a narrative, not necessarily like we're writing out a whole narrative for the episode, but just made some adjustments to where it makes sense to say this at a certain time after we've talked about certain things. So that kind of narrative is what I mean.
Yep. Also, at the $1 tier, you get access to the mobile movie musings that I do. Those are typically just recordings that I do on my phone. There should be a new one of those up about the new Superman movie. I started recording it yesterday, and then my wife came home while I was in the middle of recording it, so I'll have to finish that. But it should be up there in the feed by the time you hear this episode. And then I did a Moon Pies for Misfits, where I tried one of the series of new drinks from Aldi. Aldi now has a series of mocktails in a can, and the first one was a mojito. And I'll save my reaction because you may really want to see this. And if you sign up at our $5 producer tier, that gives you access to a once-a-month bonus audio where we talk about an EP. And we have a poll up currently for that, where if you want to go in there and vote, sign up for that $5 tier, and you'll get that bonus audio. And you also get your name said on the show. So let's shout out our producers. So thank you to Dave Brown, writer of the newsletter Oklahoma Lefty. Thank you to Steve Long, host of the podcast Rebel Nerd Radio. Thank you to Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. And thank you to Zach in Oregon, who is distantly related to the Totino's pizza family. Zach, I need to know more. What? How distant? So yeah, if you want your name said on the show, you can sign up at that tier as well. And then we have our $10 tier, where you get to choose the album we devote an entire episode to. So all of that's on patreon.com/punklautopod. So let's get into the show. So this week's episode is around the year 2005. And we like to look at what's going on in the music scene at the time. I will say that previously we have covered in episode 299, Motion City Soundtracks Commit This to Memory. We did that with the band Downhaul. In episode 249, we did Lucero's Nobody's Darlings, and they are doing a 20th anniversary of that tour this year. So I'm going to try and go see one of those dates. Episode 191, we did the Mountain Goats, the Sunset Tree. We did that with Andy Sell. Episode 133, we did Piss Jeans, Shallow with the band Demons. And episode 116, we did Jack's Mannequins. That's too many apostrophe S's. Jack's Mannequins, Everything in Transit with the band Bad Sandy. And in episode 44, we did Go Betty Goes, Nothing Is More, and Some Girls, The DNA Will Have It Say, under our old album EP format. So we've hit 2005 a couple times, but maybe not as many as some of the other years in the 2000s. All right, Dylan, this is where you shine. What is going on in the year 2005?
Yeah, it's funny the stuff that you talked about. There's certainly some like significant, notable records, but I thought it was interesting, kind of looking at what else came out that year. How many substantial albums, very notable albums, came out that year that we have not done on the show that would be worth talking about? But kind of looking at 2005 and the trends that are going on is our approach lately is to try to group things together a little more accurately and not just ramble off names of records. But 2005, there was a big proggy emo post-hardcore thing going on at the time. Very notable records from the Mars Volta. Francis the Mute came out that year. Coheed and Cambria put out Good Apollo Part 1. We've got stuff from Circa Survive, The Receiving End of Sirens, Fall of Troy. I feel like, you could even put stuff like Thrice in there, and You Will Know Us by the Trail of Dead and Chiodos. Really, I feel like it's a big year for emo post-hardcore bands trying to make smart records.
I was surprised to see in 2005 that we already have the other bands doing it. Like, I knew Coheed and Mars Volta, they're like the ones who kind of like set that ball rolling in that direction. But it was kind of wild to see, like, I didn't realize that Circa Survive already had like their first record that year. I think it's Juturna is that one. And even Receiving Into Sirens, like, oh, they're already like that close to the tail end of following what Coheed was doing. That's who they're more following. Fall of Troy is a little weirder. They kind of do their own thing. They're more unique than some of those other proggy bands, but yeah, I was very surprised to see all of those bands putting out those records at that time, because it feels like the scene must have just like picked up off of Coheed and Mars Volta like immediately, because
yeah,
that's the second Mars Volta, right? I think that's following Deloused and the Comatorium or whatever that one's called. And
I think in a lot of ways, a lot of it is just following at the drive-in footsteps. Very delayed, but I think it's just it took everybody else that long to figure out how to do it. But I mean, like you said, that's that being the first Circa Survive record, like Anthony Green had already left Seosin and started Circa Survive at that point, and Seosin still has not even put out their first album. They didn't do that until 2006. So I guess that's a sound that just kind of developed very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, the first Coheed is what, 2001? I think that sounds right. 2001. So this, there's good 4 years there for people to follow in their footsteps, but I don't even know that first record, I mean, they played Warped Tour on that first record, but like, is that sound already that big by that point? I guess In Keeping Secrets is 03, so that gives them 2 years to start putting stuff together. I think In Keeping Secrets was pretty big, so it could be just Coheed is guiding the way, but you're right, it could just be just a continuation of what was happening in that scene and in that sound.
I think things moved fast, though.
Yeah.
In the 2000s in general. I think as evidenced by the, kind of the breadth of stuff that we have to talk about, there's pop punk. There's a little more mainstream pop punk emo stuff going on. This is certainly very much the peak of mallcore. So there's Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, Paramore's first record, 30 Seconds to Mars, All American Rejects. At this point, All American Rejects is like, how much longer do they even have? I mean, I guess Fall Out Boy didn't last too much longer. Past 2005, before they went on hiatus.
05 was From Under the Cork Tree, and that is what's in there. Sugar We're Going Down's on that one, so that's a big one. That's a huge song for them. Infinity on High came out the very next year, so they were cranking them out. And Folie à Deux is 2008, so that's I think the last one for a while before they break up and reunite. So it's a big point. Yeah, this is like the breakout for Fall Out Boy. This record, that Panic album too, is the one with the big Panic song.
I mean, it's the first one, isn't it?
Yeah. Closing the goddamn door. That song. I chimed in.
Closing the goddamn door.
I write sins, not tragedies. That is the name of that song. It's so dorky. What is that All American Rejects record though? It's, let's see, I think it's like the second big one from them. Yeah, because the self-titled is 2002. That's the one with the toy car thing. This is Move Along. So Move Along was the big, and Dirty Little Secret was on that one too. So they were still pretty big.
I didn't realize they had a 2012 record. I thought they were done by 2008, but
I did not either. Huh.
Yeah, they lasted longer than I thought.
They could still be a thing too.
Well, they are. They just played a show recently. They played a tiny venue or something.
Oh, I think they have an album coming out, because if you look, they have something from 2025. It's called an EP, and it's the first song is the name of the EP, which means they're adding songs. So that's all right. So we're getting an All American Rejects album this year, probably.
Yeah, they did a house party tour. They were playing surprise pop-up shows.
Weird.
Yeah.
Does anyone love All American Rejects? Do you think they're a band that people have a really big spot for them in their heart? Because I don't know that there is.
Millennial nostalgia is stronger than you think. We got some real screamo going on as well. Mm-hmm. Scrams, if you will. There's Gospel, Funeral Diner, Ditro, Bravo fucking Bravo, Santa Loa, Transistor. This is basement level shit. Yeah. 2005, nobody knows these bands.
Yeah.
When they're putting these records out.
Yeah, they're still doing basement shows. Only your most underground screamo friend knows these bands. It's an interesting period for screamo. It's that time period where things were being called screamo that were not this. That's where your mall pop punk post-hardcore emo starts getting called screamo a lot. And these are the bands who are doing the scrams. They had to make the differentiation at that time because people were being like, "Oh yeah, I love screamo. I love Linkin Park." It's just because someone screams in a song doesn't mean the genre is screamo. But whatever.
And Gospel's a weird one too. They're even just they were a Brooklyn band, and they're real odd because they have that one LP and they went away and they just came back with a record recently that's really good.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're definitely artier than a lot of the other ones, too. Because there's a psych element to that album, too.
But, their drummer is, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a weird one because they're not known for being in anything else. They are known for this album.
Yeah.
But they're such good musicians that I'm surprised they haven't, been in another band that was more notable. This is what they're known for, really. We definitely got metalcore, as is expected for the time period, which kind of I think runs the full gamut of metalcore. I mean, you've got proggy stuff with Between the Buried and Me doing Alaska. You've got Dumb as Bricks stuff from As I Lay Dying doing Shadows or Security. You've got the pinnacle of Gothenburg worship, Darkest Hour doing Undoing Ruin. You've got your Botch Worship from Norma Jeans doing Oh God. You've got Dumb as Bricks, but for Christians. Demon Hunter put out the Triptych.
I put that in there just for us, really, because that's what we were listening to. We were listening to Norma Jean and Demon Hunter and the next band Becoming the Archetype, that's what we were listening to.
And then there's Dumb as Bricks, but making Metallica with Trivium, and hair metal with Bullet for My Valentine, so...
That was just, I had way more. And I just started trimming stuff because metalcore was massive in 2005. Parkway Drive put out their first record. That's kind of signaling the next wave of that kind of stuff too. There's tons of stuff in metalcore. Yeah. That's probably the more, next to the pop punk emo mall stuff, metalcore is the next biggest scene that's really happening at that time.
It's funny. My wife and I were talking about this time period of music recently because I was listening to Beloved actually, and I was like, yeah, this record holds up. And she was like, we were talking about what you call it and how to classify the genre, and I'm like, well, we called it post-hardcore at the time, but also you could call a lot of this stuff melodic metalcore, and it was really there is this whole bigger umbrella over it all too that is, I think people kind of call mallcore and scenecore now, I think are the terms that people have come to. And it's just funny, looking at the stuff that came out in 2005 and how sonically different so much of this is, but how easily you can put it all in the same bucket. Like your metalcore and your Fall Out Boy audiences overlap a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a weird blending period because they looked the same. If you went to an Azalea Dying show and then you went to a Panic at the Disco show, the people look the same. The clothes are the same. The fashion's the same. Those people probably like, oh yeah, somebody at a Fall Out Boy show knows a Norma Jean song or two. They're like, yeah, I saw them on MTV, or like I heard them on MySpace, and yeah, like, there was a lot more overlap. That's probably the Warped Tour Hot Topicification of that subset, that sub scene. And so those people were all overlapping because they were shopping and going to the same festivals,
Yeah, it's just funny. It's just a funny time period in how you can group things, in terms of market and stuff that wasn't doing huge numbers and didn't have, a presence in Hot Topic. There's some true hardcore going on. And I think this is kind of the seeds of the basis for a lot of what we would get into, which we talked about on the last episode, actually, in 2010, of real hardcore, of the kind of the stuff that you and I got into and past our metalcore phases, and as we got more into punk and away from metal in general. But Cursed put out 2, Modern Life is War put out Witness. Comeback Kid, I feel like, kind of straddles the line of commercial and this melodic and more real hardcore sound, but their record Wake the Dead came out that year. And there's other stuff. I mean, Municipal Waste, Bane, Blacklisted, Painted Black, Stretch Armstrong still going, kind of an older band at this point.
Yeah, hardcore was interesting because that was the one that was like, I'm not finding a lot here. Like metalcore had basically like absorbed the hardcore scene at that point. So like, there weren't as many just like what you would call as more just hardcore bands, like hardcore punk, straight from the source of hardcore, or at least like the 90s version of hardcore. So that happened in the 90s with bands like Earth Crisis, like really blending hardcore and metalcore into its own thing. And then that just continued to the point where, metalcore was just overtaking what was going on in hardcore. There might have been a little bit more of a line there. Like, I feel like you did see different, like, hardcore kids dressed different from, like, metalcore kids at times. Like, they were a lot more shorter hair and, the camo stuff and cargo shorts and hoodies at shows, like that kind of thing.
The 5-panel hats.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a little bit more of a separation. Like, I don't think someone at a Modern Life is War show is necessarily going to also be going to, a Paramore show at that time.
Yeah. Probably no anime haircuts at the Cursed shows.
Right.
There's nobody at the Cursed shows, actually. That's the story.
Yeah. Krusties, usually.
And then we've got, we're well into the post-punk revival sound. Still going very strong. The Strokes, Block Party, LCD Sound System. Pretty early for the National.
Right.
But your Franz Ferdinands and your Kaiser Chiefs and your other... I think it's funny that we had a Franz Ferdinand and a Kaiser Chiefs at the same time. Yeah. It's like we're doing World War I references.
Yeah. I was surprised there was no Modest Mouse here, too, but I think it's between records. They had already done Good News, and they hadn't done the next one yet, but they fit in that pocket, too. They're touring with these bands,
And there's your Can Arts sound with your Metric and Broken Social Scene.
Yeah.
And your American indie rock as well. Spoon, Hold Steady.
I think it's like the first Hold Steady record, too.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And this last one was for us. Or me more, I guess, but...
It was for everybody. Nobody wants to admit, but you all had one.
You had your own, yeah. Gimmick punk. We are in the age of Sidewind Dummy signing up every gimmick punk band they could possibly think of and then putting their records out. Yeah, we got Gogo Bordello with our Gypsy Punk. We got Dropkick Murphys continuing their Celtic punk sound. They're still a little more Oi influenced at this point. I think Warriors Code is the record that came out in '05. Horse the Band with its Nintendo core. I feel like that might be the one that most people had. The Aquabats continuing their superhero ska punk with Charge on that record. And then the Horror Pops were big, the Psychobilly Band. Yeah. Gimmick punk was in. And it would stay in for a couple more years, too.
But yeah, now that we've kind of looked at the broader trends, what did you almost pick for the show?
So I had a couple different things here that I was kind of curious about. I kind of hemmed and hawed on what we would talk about, but I did select Sleater-Kinney's The Woods. Part of that was we talked about not too long ago about doing a Sleater-Kinney record, and this was one of the records that I felt like was probably one of their more important albums. It's technically, at least according to Rate Your Music, it's their most popular album and their highest rated. I think it was a little bit of a... I don't know if they got attention that they hadn't been getting for the last couple records they had done, but this was a big record for them. I think it sold really well for them too. And I was like, okay, well, that's one of like the 3 that I think we should hit for Sleater-Kinney. So that's why I kind of put it on the list. But ultimately, it's my least favorite of their big records. It's a good record. I don't love The Woods, though. I think I like everything before The Woods more than this one. That being said, The Woods is probably better than some of the stuff they've done recently. So there's that as well. So to me, The Woods is kind of like in the middle of the pack of their records, but it's important.
It's an important record, and I think a big part of it is that it was kind of a swing for them. I think they took some creative chances on that record. Everything prior to that record feels a little more connected and similar. But I think The Woods, there was some ambition going into that record to make a really substantial, important record. And I think it does pay off. I think that's why it, has a lot of attention, why it has that high ranking, and it has so many listeners. But I agree, it's not my favorite of the stuff I've heard. It's probably not what I would pick. If I had to choose one Sleater-Kinney record, I don't think it would be this one.
I also considered Searching for a Former Clarity by Against Me. It's probably shocking that we've done nearly 350 episodes and we haven't done an Against Me record yet. We've had ample opportunity. They have many, many records that would make for good selections. Like, I think, there's a lot in their catalog that I feel like we could hit, and it would make perfect sense to do. They're also go ahead.
Yeah, there's at least 3 like off the top of my head, I think there's 3 records to talk about.
Yeah, it's probably Axl Rose, New Wave. Where do you go next? Transgender Dysphoria Blues?
Yeah, and this. There's probably like 4 records, honestly.
Yeah. See, I wasn't sure about this one because this is the only Against Me record that I have really any sort of like real strong connection to. This record follows the Eternal Cowboy, so it's the second album with them as a full band. This is also the record that leads to them getting the major label deal with New Wave. So this record's probably really important now that I think about it because of it's solidified their sound, because the Eternal Cowboy is still, it's electric, but they're still kind of playing like they were the acoustic band. So like that was them turning it electric. And then this is like them polishing it enough to the point where they could get the attention of a major label to sign them. Because this is the Condoleezza, this is the Bush era record. This is the Rock Against Bush album. It's the record I've listened to the most from them, that I enjoy the most. I like the like slick, crunchy Against Me sound. Once they start hitting into like the White Crosses and like the other, that record's really slick too. I enjoy that album, but it's not my favorite. And then New Wave has some songs that are kind of annoying. That's why I don't love New Wave. But yeah, I like that. That's where I think they were at for me personally, were at their best. People are either Axl Rose fans or the newer stuff. A lot of that has more of just to do with the story of RJ and Grace. But yeah, to me, like this is the record I most enjoy out of their catalog. So it's the one I wanted to talk about. It was the one I was kind of leaning towards because we hadn't done Against Me, but yeah, there's a lot to choose from with Against Me, and we should do them at some point. Maybe we should find a fan, because I don't think you and I have the most positive feelings towards Against Me or Large and Grace, which is, I don't know, that That sounds controversial, more controversial than it is, I think. Yeah. Interesting person is how I'll kind of leave it at that. But and then my other option was Gutter Phenomenon by Every Time I Die, because they're another one we haven't done. But they were a little harder to figure out because they have a pretty consistent output. I think most of their records are pretty evenly regarded. I think people just like this band, and they've liked them for a really long time. And I was like, what record do you do from them? Because they have so many, they're always well regarded. And I was like, well, what's the biggest stuff? And this record was a big deal. I remember when it came out, but I think ultimately we decided that like Hot Damn would probably be the one to do, or even the one after this. That's the one with like the deer head. Like that record was bigger than this one. This turned out to be like the lowest rated record besides their very first album, according to Rate Your Music. So that's why I was kind of like, okay, maybe this isn't the Every Time I Die record to do. I think we did say like Hot Damn's probably the one we should hit, but yeah, they're also one that I think we'll only cover once because I don't know if they changed that much from record to record.
Yeah, that's the thing that I was thinking is it's just like they're so consistent and they're so consistently regarded, and it's over time what the best record is has probably changed just from people like really spending the time with them and having the whole context of their career to measure all of their records against, but there's still no like clear winners. So to me, it's almost just like, well, historically, like what do I remember? And Hot Damn was definitely like the one when that came out. That's the one that everybody referenced and talked about. But that also was just like the beginning of a really consistent high period of their career and popularity. So kind of, I mean, everything else I recognize from that time period, from when those albums came out, but never really got into them either.
Yeah, Hot Damn's the record where they start the Southern hardcore thing, and that starts a whole trend too. Like that's a whole thing. It is worth noting that this record came out the same year as the first Mailing in the Sons of Disaster record, which was just like taking that Southern hardcore metalcore thing and doing it real bad. That's the post Under Oath band as well, with the lead singer, I think, is the main one there. Norma Jean's Oh God, is, we mentioned it in the metalcore area, but it is also like they were doing the Southern thing as a gimmick. Their music didn't really sound Southern, but I think it was just like, we're from Georgia and we're rednecks and we love Confederate flags. And that didn't change. He still loves his Confederate flags. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. Oopsie. Yeah. All right, let's get into the record that I did select. So it was my turn to pick from the year 2005, and I selected No Matter Where We Go by Latterman. stats on the band. So they're from Huntington, New York, which is apparently not too far from Long Island. They formed in 1999. This album was released August 9th, 2005 on Deep Elm Records in the United States and Yo-Yo Records in Germany. Some sites say this came out in 2006, but the Deep Elm Bandcamp for this has it coming out in 2005. The Yo-Yo Bandcamp has it in February 2006, so my guess is people got that February date from the Yo-Yo issue, and that's why Discogs thinks it came out in 2006. This is the band's second album, and the personnel on this record is Matty Joe Canino on bass and vocals, Mike Campbell on guitar, Pat Schramm on drums, and Phil Douglas on guitar and vocals. And the album was produced, mixed, and mastered by Phil Douglas in his bedroom.
So why did you pick this record over the other records you considered?
Ultimately, I was trying to figure out which of these records is the most important out of the ones that we had pulled. And I think Latterman this is the more important album. This is their second record, but it's their most well-known. It's their most popular record. And I think this record was just so influential for what's to come in punk rock, especially this lane of punk, the more orgcore, for lack of a better term, beardcore is what people were calling it at the time. Your gruff punk time period. This record becomes very important for what's to come next. The members of this band become very important for that next wave too. So it felt like the most important record. It's their biggest record as far as the one that people refer to the most. And I always loved it. So it was a record that I always enjoyed. It's the record I listened to the most from them. They had 3 LPs total, but this is the one I would go to most frequently. And yeah, I think this is the record to do. This is the important album of that bunch from an important band. So that's how I wound up on this one. What is your background with Latterman?
College, I think, is when I was listening to them the most. And I very heavily associate them with being on Tumblr, because I feel like that's where all of the punk friends that I had online were that would have been talking about Latterman.
Yeah, I was introduced to them by a friend. I think we were just riding around in his car one day, and he's like, "You ever heard Latterman?" And put him on. And I was like, "I haven't, but this rocks. I love this." I was instantly drawn into it. And yeah, they just kind of became a band that I listened to pretty regularly. I don't know that they ever became a band that I learned all the words to their music. Part of that may have to do with just how it's recorded and the fact that all the vocals are on top of each other. So it's kind of hard to pick up on the actual words. And I didn't have physical copies of it to read the lyrics along with. So they weren't one of those bands that I fully digested and could sing along with. There'd be lines on the record that I could sing along with, but not the album front to back or anything like that. So that kept them just a slight barrier between me being fully invested in this band. Also, by the time I heard them, they'd already broken up. So that was another piece of that story there too. And I think it was one of those bands too that I enjoyed them when I first heard them, but learning more about what happened later and the other bands they were all involved with, I think I retroactively began to appreciate Latterman more for what they were doing, especially at the time period, because what they were doing was lyrically and what they were saying from the stage was very, I'm not going to say it's ahead of its time, because there have been people who've always talked about these topics that they talked about. You go back to the 80s and 90s. But in this moment, in 2005, it wasn't that common to really see this kind of political, social commentary in music. Because at the time, they were more, the political stuff was very Bush-centric. It was very much, I saw one review that said, in 2005, all the punks had turned into Democrats, instead of actually politically radically left. So we just all united under our hate of Bush, and then kind of forgot the actual stuff that matters more as far as what we can do in our day-to-day kind of life, that kind of stuff. But
I mean, I don't know that all punks, I think, that's a fair point about that time period. Certainly a lot of people became politically activated for the first time, and I think maybe mistook being, within a coalition with Democrats as being more radical than it was. Took that to mean that they should be Democrats. I think young, impressionable people kind of went from the Rock Against Bush into just being like, so I vote for Democrats, right? And it's like, well, and I count myself in that group, and we certainly had Democrat parents growing up, but really I think we were politically opposed to Bush before we got into punk. But even still, I think kind of got swept into that libbing out kind of mentality. But yeah, I do think that is a good point to say that punk in this time period became less about the community organizing and the opposition to patriarchy and understanding intersectionality and the various social and political things that exist and need constant attention, and got very consumed in the just surviving the Bush presidency and escalation of war in the Middle East. But I do also think, though, we talked about the scene core stuff from this time period, and I think it is very notable to have a band like Latterman during that time period of a really big political split, I think, and not between left and right, but just generally left and politically apathetic, because so much of that scene core, mall core scene had nothing to say about politics, had nothing to say about George Bush. Certainly there were a lot of more conservative people in that scene as well, just with metalcore drawing a lot of, kind of jocks and dickheads and a lot of the Christian metalcore bands of, that time period being pretty conservative, and or at least having kind of conservative evangelical backgrounds that they hadn't fully, deconstructed from, and some of them never did. So I do think there was it was totally socially acceptable to just not say anything political in the punk world and not be pushed on that or challenged on that in any way. And to have a band like Latterman singing songs where what one of the lyrics is other bands singing songs about killing their girlfriends.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because, this is where we could talk about what else was going on in the similar scene that Latterman was involved with. But if you look at who was putting out records at this time, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is also setting the seeds of what's to come as well. But there is some similarity in what they sing about at the time. So we have one of the first Bomb the Music Industry records that year. They wind up becoming very important later, and Jeff Rosenstock being the most famous punk, I guess, in the modern day. But they are a band who did talk about kind of political, social type stuff as well. In that lane, AJJ released Candy Cigarettes. This is during the folk punk period. We have that record. We have Johnny Hobo's Split LP, which is where most of the most well-known Johnny Hobo songs come from. The later future Pat the Bunny. Really political stuff there. Propaganda released Potemkin City Limits. Propaganda are the textbook on how to be a political punk band. Latterman cites them as an influence on what they sing about and talk about in their lyrics. Paul Barabo put out a record that year. It's a self-titled record. That one's not very political, but he is in that folk punk scene.
Yeah, and I think as a songwriter has a certain sensitivity and a willingness to be vulnerable and to break down kind of masculine archetypes. And
yeah, that is fair. Yeah. There's a Wilhelm Scream record that year. I think they're a political band too. I don't know too much about them, but they are part of that same scene. I did lump Paint It Black in with the hardcore bands, but they actually probably make more sense down here with the also rans, especially politically, what they were talking about there. And then
and related scenes too. There are certainly connections there with Paint It Black, but
yeah. They come from Lifetime, and I saw lots of reviews of the time that compared Latterman to Lifetime, and I'm like, not really, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
They don't sound alike, but they do. It's a weird one.
There's an energy.
Yeah, it's more the energy than, yeah. And then, in the same sound-wise, Alkaline Trio put out Crimson that year, though this is the big jokey album that everybody makes fun of now, because it's just listen to those bells, but, and then, I would put Against Me in here as an also ran as well. And then Bear vs. Shark Terrorhawk, I probably could have put that up there with like the post-hardcore stuff, but it didn't really fit that brand of post-hardcore at the time. I would lump them in more with this, Latterman.
Bear vs. Shark are such an odd band that stands on their own, and
yeah,
you can definitely find that influence from At the Drive-In. So the proggy post-hardcore category kind of fits, but there also is such a, like, there is something about Bear vs. Shark that feels like orgcore too. There is just that sing-along ability and just like guys with flannel shirts high-fiving each other. that fits too. So an odd band, honestly, historically. They don't really belong where they came from in like the Equal Vision roster of 2003 to 5, but
yeah, they're weird band. I never knew what they were singing about either. Like, they could have been a political band, but they just wrote in such a weird way that it just never came through like exactly what they were talking about. But yeah, the kids say "fuck you, hey hey" or whatever that means. Similarly, Deep Elm Records in 2005 didn't really put in anything super notable. It is worth mentioning that Deep Elm is mostly based on like atmospheric and like post-rock music. Like a huge chunk of their catalog is that. And I think even at the time it was considered a weird move for Latterman to be on Deep Elm because they didn't sound like a ton of the bands on there. So nothing in '05 was super familiar. But in 2004, they did release Lock and Keys, like No Division, I think. Or no, that's a Hot Water Music record. I can't remember the name of the Lock and Key record, but it's their first LP. And they had a very Hot Water Music Latterman sound to them, so they kind of fit along really well with them. But previously, Deep Elm also put out albums by Branston, the Appleseed Cast, Planes Mistaken for Stars, and Star Market. So those are kind of the bands that were like as close as you could get to what Latterman was doing, because most of the rest of that catalog is just like post-rock. So,
and Planes Mistaken for Stars in 2005 doesn't fit on Deep Elm either.
Right. This was like 2001, 2 when they were on the label, but yeah, that is an odd place for them, too. And Branston being like the Christian emo band that somehow was never on any of the Christian record labels. That was always funny. It's like them and Copeland managed to like avoid Christian labels for a really long time. And then Copeland eventually gets on Tooth and Nail, but still, like on their 4th album. Let's do a little backstory. So before Latterman, Maddie and Phil played in a band called 5 Days Late with Dan Sposato. And that band breaks up and all three of them form Latterman together alongside Pat Schramm. And prior to this album, the band released their demo in 1999. And the EP called None of These Songs Are About Girls in 2000. They were telling you in the beginning, everyone, these songs aren't about girls. These songs aren't about having friends.
I don't know who thought. I mean, what's little snippets of lyrics that come through? Why did anyone ever think these songs were about girls?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why people thought that, but they missed the message, which plays into a lot of their story.
Yeah.
So then Dan Sposato winds up leaving the band after this EP, and then they try out a number of different guitarists before landing on Mike Campbell, from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. No, it's not that Mike Campbell. I wish.
That'd be crazy. Mike Campbell slide guitar on Latterman.
They released a split with Nakatomi Plaza in 2001, and their debut full-length Turn Up the Punk will be singing in 2002 on Traffic Violation Records. So, they make a little bit of a name for themselves. That record doesn't sell a ton because it's on a small label, but nobody really knows them. And they do manage to get the attention of Deep Elm, who then reissues their first record, and they record this record and release it. So sonically, their sound is a mix of pop punk, emo, and post-hardcore. There are lots of gang vocals on this record, dual vocals galore. Primarily, Phil and Maddie sing every song together. There's a handful of instances within songs where one of them sings, but for the most part, it's dual vocal. It's harmonized vocals. Well, if you could call it harmonized vocals. They're not harmonizing that much. They're just more just shouting over top of each other. Actually, I take it back. They're not shouting over top of each other like Chuck Reagan and Chris Waller did. They're shouting with each other in unison. And it really makes it hard to tell who's doing what. You have to know the Reviver catalog to really figure out, okay, that's Maddie. Okay. And then just assume the other one's Phil. Because he didn't sing in Iron Sheik. But this also has the Phil Douglas big riff and guitar wizardry of Phil. Man, what he's doing is probably not technically hard. It's lots of little harmonics, just little bing doo kind of harmonics and kind of shimmery kind of riffs. I don't think it's difficult, but the way he does it is so good. He's such a fun guitarist. And listening to this record and remembering how he sounds on the Iron Sheik records, I realized I was oh, Phil Douglas might be one of my favorite guitarists. I just love the sounds he gets out of his guitar.
He's an odd guitar player. I feel like he's not playing the guitar right.
Well, he's a punk. He just learned how to play it.
Even by a punk, he's not even doing just a bar, power chords. I can't even really grasp what he's doing. I don't know how to explain it. I guess I need to watch his hands, watch him play, because I feel like he's not even really trying to fit the rhythm.
Yeah.
He's just playing the guitar. He's almost using the guitar the way you would use a keyboard.
Yeah.
In a punk band. It's almost just this pad ambiance that he adds to everything.
Yeah, and I think it also says a lot, the fact that he always has a second guitarist in his bands, too. They have Mike Campbell here, they had Dan Sposato earlier, he has other guys in Iron Sheik later. I feel like he needs a second guitarist to be able to do the rhythm, is really what they're doing there. But really, they're the ones kind of driving it, and then he gets to kind of do his Phil Douglas magic over top of it. I think his magic is all stored in his slouchy beanie, though. I think that's where it's all at.
Yeah.
That's the most... when you're watching them, you're watching the beanie, not his hands.
How's that thing staying on?
It's so precariously back there. It should fall off, every time, and I've never seen it fall off.
Yeah, he's really just hovering over the music.
Yeah.
Wizardry is a good way to describe it. And that sounds more technical than it is. He's ripping, shredding solos, but it is just this magical aura.
Yeah. And so, yeah, the album is, review-wise, it got a lot of kind of middling reviews. There weren't a ton of really strong reviews, but the people who really dug it. So it's one of those things where it's the people in the know are really into it, but then the critics were just it's nothing new. It's nothing inventive.
Which is not even true.
Right. It is very different from so much.
Nothing sounds like this.
Right. On the surface, you're going to be it's another Hot Water Music knockoff. It's not really. They're not doing what Hot Water Music are doing.
No.
I think you're being distracted by the vocals. Like, that's the closest you get. Or, and I saw people say, like, Small Brown Bike is another comparison. It's like, kind of, but not. The Reed brothers don't sound anything like what Phil's doing here. And, yeah. The contemporary, and like I said, the Lifetime comparison, I was like, I mean, Lifetime is doing melodic hardcore. They're doing, like, skate punk, pop punk.
Yeah.
You know? They're more in line politically and lyrically, probably, but sonically. Like, Ari sounds nothing like Maddie, you know. Dan sounds nothing like Phil on the guitars, you know. This goes into more what happens after, but they were unique, and they extremely influential.
Yeah. There really is no good one-to-one comparison for what Latterman was doing at this time period, because it's like, Hot Water Music has, I mean, for one, has that rhythm section. The drumming and bass on Hot Water Music records is like way more complicated than it needs to be. But also those guitars are like crunchy JCM 800, just like 90s punk guitars. Like Latterman, again, I can see the energy being a similar element there. Small Brown Bike and Casket Lottery and those bands feel probably the closest, but even still, they have like a level of like tightness and polish and punch to them. I feel like it's maybe just like some cabin jazz almost.
Yeah, I can see that energy being there.
And like some of the more ramshackle, loose kind of emo from the late 90s being an influence. Maybe some Promise Ring, but even still, that feels so much tighter and power poppy.
Yeah, as I say, Promise Ring also feels like they're borrowing from like Super Chunk and Archers of Loaf too. Like they're going in that direction. Yeah, sonically, they're drastic. They are. I won't say drastically different because the tones I think are the thing that are the most common with what's going on, but just the way they play is so different. The way they sing is so different. Like singing dual vocals for an entire set, like who else does that? You know, like Teenage Fan Club, you know. But even then, they do the choruses together. They don't always do all the verses together, you know.
Yeah. And Latterman's not harmonizing.
They're not, because I don't think
they're
they can.
Singing the same thing, but not even timing it perfectly together, you know.
And that's kind of how I feel like their entire sound is. Like sloppy's not the word, because sloppy has a negative connotation to it.
Well, it's not even sloppy in the same way that like the Replacements are sloppy and people love it.
Yeah. They're just not tight is really the thing. They're not a tight band. But you do also have to be, it's tricky because you do have to be kind of tight to be singing the exact same lyrics at the exact same time for your entire record. So they're in sync. That's more, they're in sync with what each other are doing, but they're not technically clean. They're not, and that's every part of it. All the instruments are not the most, like, I mean, maybe the drumming might be the most technically proficient part of the band. And what we're saying about Phil's guitar playing, like, it's inventive, but it's not like, I don't, you know.
Yeah, it's not super super technical. Yeah, it's not.
And I think Maddie plays guitar in Reviver, so I don't think bass is even her like main instrument either. So it's just like she plays bass in Latterman because I guess the other guitarists were better, or she could, I don't know, maybe she just got better at guitar later. But yeah, so not only is their sound like this unique thing, but like lyrically they are very much in tune with social issues more so than like political. All Music Review has a quote that says, "Anyone who recognizes and struggles against patriarchy, homophobia, racism, alienating wage labor, and any other of our world's many flaws." Like that is what they are singing about in their stuff. And like that's mostly social stuff. That's more, I mean, there's systemic racism and systemic, you know, homophobia and all that kind of stuff, but it is more personal politics is typically how it's kind of viewed as. It's not like it's not like economical. They're not talking about the stock market, and they're not. There might be some songs about like the war, but I never got the impression they weren't a Rock Against Bush band in the sense that they weren't talking about Condoleezza Rice and, you know, Donald Rumsfeld or whatever. They were talking about the stuff that you saw. one thing, there's a set of lyrics on the song "My Bedroom Is Like for Artists," the final track on the album, not the first track. That's the part 2. That's gotta be annoying. But the lyrics are: "Streets gentrified like it's no problem. Boys in bands still singing about killing their girlfriends." Let's say anything is what they're talking about there specifically. "People leave communities while they're still struggling. Come on, everybody, sing along. We're to blame. Punks start dealing with their own white privilege. We tell all the boys to stop being so aggressive. Actually, give a shit about the place we live in. Come on, everybody, sing along. Let's fix this." So, I don't know. In 2005, I don't think I'd ever heard white privilege as a word, as a phrase. I'm sure it existed, and I'm sure if like you were really into like radically left, text, you would have seen that all the time. Or if you're reading lots of, stuff from like non-white writers, like that kind of writing.
It wasn't really in the mainstream social discourse,
right,
at that time. Yeah.
And one thing that I think of is when I look at what Latterman, and even more so like Reviver, is they were one of the first bands that I felt like were really trying to challenge the punk community. So much of punk was about railing against the world and the expectations of what's going on and like shouting down the people who are not from punk. But Latterman felt like one of the first bands, Propaganda probably does this too, but that really is looking...
Fugazi historically did it too.
Yeah, it's true too. Yeah. But like in this time period, in 2005, looking inwardly at the punk scene and talking about how we can be better, like how we can, challenge these, sexist and misogynist thoughts. There's a song on here called Dear Boys. It's not even really a song. It's more of just like noise with spoken word under it. And that song is talking about, that's like probably the most explicitly feminist song on the record, because it's telling the boys in the punk scene to, hey, maybe we should help out our, fellow women in the scene, and do something other than, I don't know, continuing these traditions going forward. And yeah, calling out white privilege. I mean, I bet Fugazi and Propaganda talked about that too, but also Propaganda and Fugazi talked about bigger political themes too. Like they would talk about anti-war stuff a lot. Like they hit on those, I feel like, more often than the internal stuff. So yeah, the Latterman in 2005 was, people were, I don't know how you hear those lyrics and think this song's about friendship. It's like, what?
Yeah. You're not understanding what they mean by community.
Right. Yes.
You're like, oh, community, like my buddies? Like, no, it's not just like a posy, good vibes hangout time. It's like, it's the work of building and organizing community. It's organizing community against capitalism, against, cops, against...
Yeah. Yeah, we knew punks knew cops were bad, because that just started back in the like 80s, because they were beating up the punks.
Yeah, but even then, like, how much of that was just reactionary, like, oh, they beat us up because we're different, like...
Yeah.
And not being like, I mean, how many of those people turned out to be conservatives?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's like, libertarians hate cops too.
Yeah. And just so much of like what's being talked about on this record. Like I read all the lyrics of this album and it was just like, man, this is what people sing about now in the 2020s. Like this kind of lyric became much more prominent. And a lot of these like talking points and they're now on mainstream news. Like talking about white privilege is a thing that you can see on CBS now, like in 05, I don't think you were seeing that kind of stuff really. So
yeah, I feel like the time period, I mean, there certainly was dialogue about racism and especially in light of like the Islamophobia of the Bush administration. But a lot of it, I think, was very clinical. A lot of it was very like, well, this is something that is perpetuated by hate groups and Republicans, not this is something that is intrinsic and you need to do the work to unlearn in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what Latterman was telling us. They were telling us to work on yourself is really what they were saying. Like, figure out how you can be useful and helpful and, break what has been instilled in you from birth in this country, which is still a thing that is instilled in people in this country. We just have enough people who are, aware of it now to really be able to talk to each other about it in a way. Typically, it was just the marginalized communities that were affected by it who were talking about it the most. Now we do have we have Democrats talking about it, and they don't do anything about it, but they talk about it. But that's further along than we were in 2005. I mean, all the Democrats voted to go to war to Iraq. All of them did.
Yeah.
So Democrats are gonna Democrat, They just have better talking points this time around, but no follow through.
And I mean, some could argue, I think you can reasonably make the case that the talking about it is what they think is the point. And right. That is what hurts them. It's a lot of talk and not a lot of action.
Yeah. Yeah, they talk about it, but they won't do anything substantial to actually improve it, or at least make attempts to, because, they don't have a majority
talking about it so much, makes the conservatives mad, makes
more
centrists feel like they're the ones on trial and have to be really defensive and swing back and forth and can't make up their minds, but then just not actually following through on any real policies that do anything makes all the leftists go, well, you're just talking.
Yeah. You talk the points, but you don't do anything to help the people. And that's the main difference. Talking about it just gets people to stop, calling your office and leaving angry voicemails. We addressed it. It's you didn't do anything with it, though. The record itself, I guess we could hit this real quick. It's an interesting album. It's structured really interestingly. It starts off with, they have a couple of these, instrumental talky bits. So, the album kicks off with, it's like a noisescape intro. It's not really much of a song, but it leads directly into Doom, Doom, Doom. You do have Dear Boys, which is a spoken word kind of thing. But I wish I had a transcript of that, because it's so hard to make out because of the filter and the effect on the vocals makes it really hard to understand. Maybe if it was easier to understand, some of these dorks would have figured out it wasn't about their buddies. And then it has I Wish Bronco Was Here, which is a instrumental track with some horns in there, which there's your Cap and Jazz right there. A little American football in there as well. Instrumental track. So those are the three non-full songs. I will say most of the record sounds the same. The actual full fleshed out songs. There is a sameness to the record. It's kind of like that on all their records.
It's like that with all of the Reviver records and all of the Iron Sheik records too, though.
It's true. They know how to do one thing, and they do it really well. I also, arguably, I think they did it better in their separate bands than together. Some of this may be constraints of production as well. It's all recorded in a bedroom, so that makes it a little. But for a bedroom recording, it sounds pretty good. Phil hadn't done a ton of production at this point. He's done way more since then. But for a bedroom recording, it sounds pretty good. And he mastered it himself, too. He did everything on this record. I think the mix might be the weakest part of the production. I do think the lyrics could have been a little clearer and a little bit more easy to make out. But it also kind of fits with the overall feel of the album, too. I don't know if bringing those lyrics up in the mix is going to... It might mess with the balance a little bit. I don't know. It's kind of tough. I know what he's going for. He wants this kind of... It's almost lo-fi. And it could be the limitations of the setup that he had. But yeah, I do wonder if they were just mixed slightly higher and the vocals were slightly higher in the mix, if the message would have gotten across a little cleaner. But that being said, I say that. They were saying all this shit between songs live too, though. So... You have to be not paying attention when you're seeing them. I guess that's the other thing. Not everybody saw them. That's the main thing. But I do like this. I like how the whole record sounds together.
Yeah. I mean, I think the mix is fine. There is a charm to it. And this record stands out compared to the other Latterman records. And I mean, I think they're all good records, but this one sounds really unique. And there's something to this record that makes it the singular record that you should hear by Latterman. And I've listened to their other records and tried to compare and tried to figure out why it's this one. And I don't know. I can't put my finger on it exactly.
It could just be because it was the easiest one to get at the time. And I think the next one is like the same year they break up or close to it. So that might be part of it as well.
I don't know. Maybe there's something to the interludes and the whole structure of this record that just gives it something special. But like I said, I've listened to the other records and they don't hit the same way. They sound good. The songs are good. It's the same basic sound from the beginning and to the end of their career. I mean, like we said, every other band they did sounds the same, just in maybe slightly different ways. But like this record in particular just has a flow to it, and it has a holistic experience.
I was going to say, it feels like one big cohesive piece of art. Like, I feel like all those interludes are necessary for this record to work the way it does. Yeah, it's borderline like one big piece of music. I mean, there's clearly not, but it's kind of like the vibe that it gives. It just has this feeling across the front and back of this album that I do think makes it stand out from the other two albums. Turn Up the Punk is kind of rough. It's like the first record. And I guess the third one was like a little more polished, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's too polished. I don't know. I don't know what it is about this. It could just be the collection of songs works better too. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is about this record. They have a visual theme too, like the blue sky is on like every cover. The blue theme. It could just be this is the one that people heard first, and then that became the perpetual like, have you heard this record? And you know, the next wave of people get this one first because it's the first one that those people heard, and then just became the agreed upon. That's the one, because it is where we're at. That is the one that people care about the most from them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's it. I think there is something.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I can't really like pick out too many songs that I feel like are like, oh, that's an outstanding song. Like I do think Doom 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 and Yo Get Into It are like, those are the perfect two like full songs to start the record off with. To me they're the best part of the record. But I think of everything in roughly the same quality though. This project is Stagnant, An Ode to John Contra, Fear and Loathing on Long Island. Like video games or fantasy novels are fucking awesome. Zombies Are Pissed, like all those stuff. Like I mean, I guess We're Done For is like the only other one that I'm just kind of like, it's okay. But there's no stinkers on here. There's no duds, but there aren't a lot of like high highs that step out of the record past the first like two full songs. So I don't know. It's a good record. I mean, front to back, it's great. We didn't really talk about that. Like revisiting it, what did you think?
It's a lot of fun. I still feel the same way when I listen to this record. And I don't get tired of it. I don't reach for this a whole lot. I've certainly have probably spent more time with like the first Iron Sheik record, but there is something else going on with that record that makes it so special. But I can come back to this record now and I feel like Latterman in general, like I can put on Latterman and I know I'm not 20 years old anymore. I really don't feel like I am. But I listen to a Latterman record and I'm like, I am in a interdimensional space. Like I can put on this record and it's like, I am simultaneously 35 and 20 years old. I am me now and me then.
Yeah, you're Dr. Manhattan sitting on the moon. And
yeah.
I am in 1985 and in 1995 and in 2005 all at the same time. Yeah, I know what you mean. It is like a wormhole when you listen to this record because it is such a throwback to a very specific period and sound that was actually earlier than when it was the popular sound too. Let's do the aftermath. So after this record, Mike Campbell winds up leaving the band. He later joins Laura Stevenson in the Cans and starts as part of her live band. I think he's even still playing with her. I think the most recent thing she's on, and she has a record coming out this year. So I'll be interested to see if he's on that one too. They released one more record called We Are Still Alive in 2007, and then they broke up in 2007 due to sexism. That's this oversimplification of what it is, but basically they got tired of having to explain their songs over and over and over again because people weren't getting it. They're like the breakup interview they did with Maddie was like, yeah, these songs are not about friendship. Everybody likes friendship. We don't need to write songs about friendship. So basically just like missing the point is really why Latterman broke up. So Maddie goes on to form Shorebirds and the band's Reviver. Pat goes on to play in Bridge and Tunnel and a band called Day Trader briefly. And then Phil goes on to play in Small Arms Dealer and then Iron Sheik. So Reviver and Iron Sheik especially become very important. Maddie, Pat, and Phil all later reformed together to do Tender Defender, which is just a one-off spiritual continuation of Latterman. It is a 3-piece. I haven't listened to that one as much in recent years. I'm curious what one guitar Phil Douglas band sounds like. I need to go back and listen to see what he's doing different there, but they have reunited a few times over the years. Typically one-off shows. They have done like one, I think they did like a European tour, like 2011. If they did any touring, it was like short, very short. And I saw them at Fest twice. Did you see them at one of those? I couldn't remember.
I think so.
Did you see them the year it was them and then Tender Defender played too?
Yeah.
That sounds right. You maybe weren't there for the first one, but
Yeah.
I saw them at 8 Seconds. So if you remember seeing them in 8 Seconds, then you were there. That was the first year they were back. And then they came back, I think, the next year, and they played Bo Diddley. And the Tender Defender played, I think Tender Defender played like Common Ground maybe, or something like one of the smaller ones. And then, yeah, they become extremely influential. Bands like Sprainerd and Timeshares are probably the most well-known bands to really copy that sound. But really, if you look at those Fest lineups from like 2011, 2012, you will probably find like 10 more bands who sound like Latterman doing the Latterman thing. I do think Reviver and Iron Sheik is the reason why people were copying that sound, but it was a case of like, we're doing Latterman, which is what Reviver and Iron Sheik were doing. They were doing their version of Latterman. They just happened to be members of Latterman doing it.
Yeah. But we all had this Latterman record before anything Iron Sheik or Reviver did.
It's true. I remember I was at some like random show in Greensboro. I think I was with our guitarist, Keegan. I don't even remember what show it was, who it was, what we were doing. But there was some dude there who used to be in a Hickory like metalcore band. And I don't even remember his name. Greg, maybe? I don't know if that's right. He had dark hair. But we were talking to him because he was going to the same show we were going to, and I guess we just ran into each other. Keegan knew him better than I did. I knew him from being in other bands, but I don't remember which ones. But he was saying then, he's like, I want to do a Latterman style band. It's like, do you know what Latterman sings about? It was kind of my thinking. I was like, you're like an ignorant metalcore band from Hickory, North Carolina. Like, what do you know about Latterman? But it was the sound. It was the popular sound at the time. And I don't think he ever did. Maybe he did. But I don't know that guy's name to look him up. But even that's what I'm meaning to say is like the stretch of the Latterman sound in the early 2010s even hit Rinky Dink Little Hickory, you know. We didn't have any bands that actually did sound like that, but we had people who wanted to do it.
Okay, do you feel like there's a similarity to Latterman to like Amazing Core bands? I
am still very unclear what Amazing Core is. I know Bane is one. That's kind of all I know about it.
Like,
is it an anthemicness to it? Is it the big music of hardcore?
Like Have Heart?
Okay, yeah.
I think is considered an Amazing Core band. Heart-filled. Good dudes.
Yeah, I can see maybe, some similarities there. There's a little big music in Latterman too, I think. It's very tiny, but I think it's there. I don't know.
Maybe I'm misinterpreting what Amazing Core was too, but
yeah, I've heard people explain it to me and I still don't know what it is. I know Bane and Half Heart, but I don't think Bane and Half Heart even actually sound that much alike, so I don't know why those are the two. Well, did we win?
Yes.
Yeah, we won. What do you want to rate it?
I think there's like as great as this record is, I don't think I'm quite 5 stars, but a 4.5.
That's exactly where I'm at. 4.5 is kind of where I was. I don't think it's a perfect record from front to back. I think what they did with Reviver and Iron Sheik is actually better than what they did with Latterman. I think they fine-tuned it. Because I do consider, the first Iron Sheik record a 5-star album. At the time, I considered the first Reviver record a 5-star record. I know we did an episode on it too, and I don't remember what my thoughts were at the end of that one, but I think technically it's a 5-star for me, but I just like burned out on it. I don't think that's a problem with the music itself, but yeah, I think that's it. So thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you all. Had a really good time talking about this record and everything around it. So thank you for listening. You can follow us on all forms of social media. We're at Punk Lotto Pod on pretty much all of them. You can follow Dylan at all the major awards on all the apps. Husker Dylan on all the apps. Anything else we're missing there? Majorawards.bandcamp.com.
That's it.
Yeah. Stuff in the works. Working on some music. Got some shows lined up. And yeah, I think that will do it. So thank you all so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.